But wait, there's another twist to this story now. The federal government and a source in the federal government has confirmed to CTV News that the Prime Minister is now considering a trip to Washington next week.
Well, it seems like Mark Carney and the mainstream media are on full-on damage control to try to minimize the potential backlash Carney and the government are going to be getting from his comments he made over the weekend, as the mainstream media is coming up with every excuse under the sun as to what he actually meant. So without further ado, let's dive into the news. Now, I think it's safe to say that the mainstream media probably didn't want to bring much light to this story or situation, as not only did it take them quite a while to report on it, but the panelists and pundits that they've had on their programs have come up with every excuse, it seems like, under the sun as to why Mark Carney said the words that he said. And not only that, you can tell by the titles of their videos that they are just trying to downplay and dismiss this. From the CBC, opposition slams Carney over the "who cares" comment. You have CTV, a tough stance, or was he just annoyed? Front bench on the PM Carney's comments on on Canada-US talks. Then you have City News, Carney attacked over the "who cares" remark. And last but not least, Power and Politics with David Cochran. The panelists, oh man, they had some interesting things to say. And that's where I figured we'd start off. Let's take a look at some of the coverage that took place yesterday in regards to the comments and the or backlash that he's now getting from the leaders of the opposition.
Who cares? I mean, it's a detail. It's a detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters. I don't have a burning issue to speak with the president about right now.
About when was the last time he spoke to U.S. President Donald Trump? It's been 1 month since President Trump ended all trade talks with Canada, and Mark Carney's Sunday morning candid remark became fire starter for opposition MPs on Monday.
Mr. Speaker, we care. We care about the workers who've lost their jobs and don't have paychecks to make their mortgage payments. Why doesn't he care?
I expect much more responsible leadership from the Prime Minister. This type of attitude is beneath his office.
The Prime Minister is back in Canada but didn't attend the House, leaving it to other MPs to respond.
Of course, the Prime Minister cares about the well-being of Canadians, our workers and industries. And that is why we are carrying out constructive negotiations with the U.S.
No, he's not being dismissive. He's overseas in the midst of very important negotiations with our allies on trade deals. He's been very forthcoming, as is the government, about the fact that during a difficult time in our relationship with the United States, it's critical for Canada's productivity and growth that we diversify our trade relationships.
I think the Prime Minister well understands that the U.S. relationship with the U.S. is incredibly important. I don't think it was meant to minimize anything.
Now, because of Poilievre's performance in the House of Commons yesterday, that was a lot of the contrasting clips that they were playing, where they would show Carney saying what he said, or they would show Pierre Poilievre attacking what he said, and then that was kind of the narrative that they were building. However, the leader of the bloc also put out a message the day that those comments were made. He writes, "Who cares? That's not how the Prime Minister is going to restore the necessary relationship with the United States. We didn't choose their president, even if he didn't hesitate to interfere in the federal campaign, which contributed to the fear of the election of the Liberals." He's calling him out yet again. "But now we have to live with the reality. Not to be naive by cozying up to the least reputable countries, China, the UAE, restore a valid diplomacy with the USA, and resume the discussion on tariffs and trade. We won't replace 75 to 80% of our exports that go to the United States in a few months, not even in a few years. This disdain from the Prime Minister could prove to be very costly and clumsy, error in judgment." But again, most of the coverage, if not all of it, is about how Pierre and the Conservatives are attacking Carney on this. They're showing the House of Commons question period clips. They show Steve McKinnon, Ben Carr, Anthony Housefather. They're saying, well, of course Carney cares. You know, he knows how important this deal is with the U.S. Yet, when you play that clip, he's very flippant about that question. Well, when's the last time you talked to him? Who cares? I think the people who have probably lost their job because of the tariffs care, or the ones who have reduced work because the shifts are being brought down care. The ones who maybe can't even afford to buy groceries, pay their mortgage, stuff like that, because of the sectoral tariffs. I think they're the ones who care. And that's why Carney's probably going to the US next week, or has announced that he'll be doing a Washington trip, because he's realized, I probably shouldn't have said that. And maybe his handlers are on him now. But when we move to the next coverage of this on CTV, you have the former Liberal Premier, Brian Gallant, giving excuses saying, well, Carney's not used to this maybe. He's not a seasoned politician yet. And even Rob Benzie of the Toronto Star saying, he did kind of chastise Carney a little bit, but bringing it back to Pierre Poilievre saying, well, he did the same thing with the Apple and this and that. Just take a listen to these guys.
Brian, this is tough to know really where to begin, because you look at this and it's like taking a tough stance overseas, and then once you land in Canada, realizing maybe how it landed, a bit of a shift. What's your read of why this is now seemingly muddied?
My sense is not necessarily that it was a tough stance he was taking. I think he was just a bit annoyed. This is the sort of political gamesmanship that I think Carney is not really used to. He's obviously getting the experience quite quickly, going right in the top job in his first foray into elected office. But essentially, the jam that you get with that question is, have you spoken to the president? And if he says no, it looks like he can't get a meeting. It looks like he can't get the audience. It looks like he's not doing anything. If he says yes, then obviously he has to give details. And in this case, that obviously wasn't the case. So he has to say no. And the follow-up is, well, why aren't you reaching out? Can't you get a chat with the person that has basically the most important file for Canada at the moment? Can you not, and are you not reaching out constantly? So it's just this political gamesmanship that I don't think he enjoys, I don't think he likes, and frankly, I don't think he's necessarily got a lot of experience at it. So who cares was kind of a flippant response to not accepting the frame of the question. And because of that, I think they're now sort of trying to change a channel and say, well, of course he cares, and he's going to go to D.C. when it's appropriate, and apparently it's appropriate now.
You know what? I think that I'm going to play the reporter here because I play one on television. He was being dismissive of a reporter, and he was finding the question beneath him. And I think he was reverting to the Mark Carney we saw on that trip to England just after he became prime minister. And when he didn't like being questioned about his personal finances, he was very, very dismissive. I think he found the question beneath him, and he was impatient, and that's why he said that. Although I do have to give Lisa kudos for giving her former colleague Steve Outhouse a shout out, because that is probably a good sign for Mr. Poilievre in Ottawa. But I also think that Mark Carney being dismissive of a reporter, Pierre Poilievre really isn't on great solid ground when it comes to his treatment of the media. We all remember the apple crunching thing.
Those are not the same. What Pierre did there with the apple, he was defending himself because of this guy trying to be a smartass and pull a gotcha over him by saying, "Oh yeah, you're taking a page out of Trump's playbook," and he's like, "What playbook are you talking about?" And the guy couldn't answer the question. And he's just happened to be eating an apple. So he's like, no, come on, explain to me. You've said this now a few times. I want you to explain to me what you're talking about. And the reporter had nothing. He just kept using these buzzwords. Oh yeah, you say right wing and left wing. And he's like, I actually never talk about that. But this is what Rob Benzie is saying is the same comparison to Carney either putting down where he says to Rosemary Barton, look inside yourself. And now this one where he just flippantly says, well, who cares? These are not the same. But one thing I will say is the host, Michael Couture, he does make a joke about that and say, well, maybe it's Carney that now has to look inside of himself.
I don't think he was talking about who cares about having a trade deal. I think he was like, who cares, you idiot reporter? Why are you asking me that?
Yeah, and in closing, Brian, do you think that the Prime Minister, to quote Rob Benzie there, because I was on that trip, do you think that Mark Carney needs to look inside himself now?
Now, unfortunately, it didn't just end there, because as you could guess on Power and Politics with David Cochrane, he tried his absolute hardest to defend Mark Carney. But it wasn't just him, because Brad Levine, the NDP representative, made some weird excuse. Well, maybe it was because Carney was tired from all the flying he was doing. Maybe he was just a little bit jet lagged. He did go to the Middle East and then quickly went to South Africa afterwards. He's not a seasoned politician. They always use this excuse. He hasn't been doing this for 10 plus years, which Kate Harrison actually then shut down quite quickly. She said, this guy's not Joe Biden. He's not in his 80s. He has a bit of more stamina than that. Plus, this is self-imposed. He didn't need to fly there. He didn't need to do any of these things, but he's choosing to do that. And he could have chosen his words a little bit better. He could have answered the question a little bit better, which then David Cochrane again tries to defend him. And Kate pushes back and she says, no, listen, he's done this with other reporters already. Just in that event that happened a few weeks ago where he said pipelines are boring. Like he's getting very, very snarky, especially when he doesn't like where the conversation's going. But take a look at this whole interaction.
Brad, how do you interpret what the Prime Minister said there in South Africa? It is being characterized as indifferent, maybe, to the consequence of this, or defenders of the Prime Minister, they were telling me, he's like not wanting to look desperate in terms of like dealing with Donald Trump, playing it cool. What do you make of what we saw and heard there?
Or a third option could be that international travel really takes it out on anybody. No, it's fair enough. I mean, he did come across a little short there, and we saw glimpses of that. I think in the election campaign as well. So, I don't want to dismiss the notion that flying to the Middle East and then on to South Africa takes a toll on somebody, and same questions over and over again. And again, the Prime Minister is not, decades into this industry.
Right, but to be clear, Kate, the who cares was in response to a question of when did you last speak to Donald Trump, right? Like, and he doesn't want to get, we don't get readouts every time there's a conversation anymore. There's just a difference in the communication style of this. So it's that as opposed to the trade agreement. But, it is stalled. There are challenges. He's engaging with India. He went to the UAE, and this comes with its own criticisms. But there's a very clear, deliberate, simultaneous strategy to pivot away from the U.S. While also not looking needy to the U.S.
And that would have been the direction to take the question, right? Of course, we have our challenges with the United States. I am here forming new relationships and and opportunities, and the Prime Minister didn't do that. The man is not Joe Biden. He runs marathons regularly. I am not keen to give him a pass on a grueling international travel schedule, which he undertakes himself.
Brad's too soft, is what you're saying.
You said it, not me.
Maybe you should be giving him media training. That's a very good answer.
I'm not sure that would be welcome, but. No, I think that it might not just be a glib off the cuff comment. I think that the government has been trying to create a little bit of distance with those negotiations. You can understand why the media would be asking questions all the time. The entire last election was about this issue. It was the Prime Minister that raised the stakes on this issue in terms of his ability to manage it. So you can understand why a reporter might ask, hey, how's it going on Canada-U.S. trade relations? But I think that there might be a little bit too much Kool-Aid drinking over at 80 Wellington Street with respect to what makes a good soundbite in the moment and what's going to play with the boomer base and that dismissive tone, which we also saw in a question from a female, not a reporter, but a host about pipelines. Pipelines are boring. I think that there's a pattern of dismissiveness here, and I'm not sure that it's entirely just, again, an off-the-cuff remark. I think that's intentional.
Pipelines can't be that boring if you're going to sign an MOU with the Premier of Alberta about
his first response. My comment is his first response when he's backed into a corner is snark.
Look, I hear you, but clearly, they've been engaged on it, right? So they obviously don't find it boring. They've been working on it. They're going to spend political capital on it.
How about saying
it?
I look forward to sharing more news on that soon.
Right.
Now, I don't know about you, but there's something about David Cochrane that just really gets under my skin when you constantly see him jumping through all of these hoops to try to defend and deflect for the government. It's very grotesque, and I'm sure most of you guys feel the same way. Let me know in the comment section below if you do feel that way. Maybe it's something about the CBC in general, because as we move to the last segment that I want to show you with a different host, Andrew, this was the only actual critique that I found on the mainstream media, if it felt like outside of conservative critique, on what Carney and his government is doing right now. They brought on a former Canadian ambassador to the UN, and the line of questioning, I don't think, went the way that they were hoping it went. So take a look at this, and then we'll talk about it.
the Prime Minister's comment tell us about the state of U.S.-Canada relations? For more on that, I want to bring in Louise Blais. She's a former Canadian ambassador to the United Nations and a former consul general based in Atlanta. Louise, nice to see you. Thank you.
Hello, Andrew.
What was your reaction when you heard the Prime Minister's remarks?
Well, I was disappointed. I think he was expressing frustration at the fact that the media keep asking him about it, and really there is no new answer to give. There was obviously no steady contact between the two leaders. I think we're all a little bit in a frosty period in our relationship, to say the least. So I think it's dangerous. Comments make headlines when it's really relationships that make policy. So I think he appeared a little dismissive of the United States and the impact of the tariffs on Canadians. And I think obviously that wasn't optimal. And we just have to hope that it doesn't, in fact, continue to deteriorate the relationship, because we know that the Americans listen to what we say, and they feel that we're being that we're just, have two-faced approach. We tell them things when we speak to them, but then we express other things publicly. And I don't think that's helpful in terms of building the relationship.
So in your conversations, how do you think, maybe you can get into it a little more, do you think Carney's remarks and his broader strategy with Trump are being received?
Yeah, I get asked often, to be totally honest, when I'm in the U.S., what is your strategy in Canada? There's a sense that we keep poking the bear, and we're among the only ones who are doing it, and we have a lot at stake. I mean, you can contrast our approach with that of the Mexicans, for example. I think we just haven't found the right footing. It's been difficult, really, to be honest, for the Prime Minister. He ran on a campaign where he was going to stand up to the president, the elbows up. So it's difficult. And every time that he does anything that really tries to build goodwill and good faith, he gets a lot of criticism in Canada for caving. So he's a bit stuck, and he's trying to navigate those waters. But at the moment, since the ad, he doesn't have a lot of water to row the boat on. And so I think it's incumbent on us at the moment to try to be at least stay out of trouble with these kinds of comments, and try to let the temperature come down, and so that we can resume talks. And if it's not going to be for a deal, it should just be to essentially have conversations, continue to prepare the renewal of USMCA.
Now, I find it interesting that she mentions the two-face aspect of this, because this is something that Donald Trump had actually said back when Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister. He said that Justin Trudeau was two-faced, especially when he found out that Justin Trudeau was talking about him behind his back. There was that whole hot mic situation. And Donald Trump, flat out said, well, the guy's two-faced. What do you expect? So now that she's bringing up this two-faced aspect again, there you go. But she also mentioned that we're basically just poking the bear all the time. Everything that we do is basically poking the bear. But look at what Andrew responds to her, the way his body language is as he's bringing up this question, just being like, does that mean we just got to kowtow to them and this and that? Just take a look at his body language.
I mean, does that mean caving, though? Does that mean sort of kowtowing to the U.S. president who cuts off talks because he saw an ad that was an accurate reflection of a former Republican president, Ronald Reagan, who, generally speaking, didn't like tariffs? So if he can just cut off, so is Mark Carney just supposed to, he apologized for that, and now he just has to kind of kowtow to the whims of a U.S. president that has threatened to take us over without asking?
Well, look, Andrew, I don't think it's the accuracy of the ad that's really the problem here. Is the ad itself. I mean, was it the wise move just on the eve of when the government was making headway to buy advertising in the United States, political advertising, and use a former Republican president to contradict the current leader? I mean, that's the issue. Was it good judgment? I don't think so. I mean, it was the ads were pulled, and British Columbia decided not to go ahead with their own ad with softwood lumber. So that gives you an idea. So no, it wasn't helpful. Yeah. And that doesn't mean we need to kowtow. I mean, we don't need to place ads, and we certainly wouldn't want the Americans to place ads in Canada.
And that's the point that they've been trying to make, whether it's Pete Hoekstra talking about it or Donald Trump bringing it up. It's the fact that we shouldn't be putting ads in the U.S. in regards to what's going on there. We need to be having conversations. We need to be talking. And the way Andrew's just like, well, the ad was good. Like, it was accurate. What is he supposed to do to the... Just his body language, so dismissive of everything that she's basically saying, and him saying, well, Carney has every right to be doing what he's doing. Carney is in a tough situation. I acknowledge that. But what they're doing is not helping the situation. And I'm not saying that they need to bend over backwards and give them everything they need, but at least don't do it so you're screwing us even harder to the point where we do have to give them up more just to get back to a neutral position. And we've been seeing that over and over again, where he drops the digital service tax, he drops the reciprocal tariffs, he does this, he does that, and we're doing like incremental little movements forward, but giant leaps backwards. Well, with all that being said, let me know what you guys think about all this. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.